Hello, this is JOMAJ Studios, and this is our original fantasy action adventure, Slay, The Path of a Saint, Episode 2. After Nee signed out, we used the path leading out of the sickbay. Nee's disorientation had begun to clear, and details in his head began to iron out, like how the dormitories were made up of 4 unpainted bungalows each, and the gutters around the school stank beyond belief. He even remembered fighting near the nastiest gutter, which was the one in front of the dining hall. It was his 5th night in school, and the fight was with a JS3 boy by the name of Bolaji. It was after a maths test that he knew he had failed, which in turn caused him to be in a foul mood. So much so, he didn't even stop to say hello to his crush at the time. He had almost reached the long path that would lead to his dormitory, when a dirty white shirt was thrown on his head. Now this shirt belonged to Bolaji, a boy who was about 5 foot 11 inches tall and weighed as much as the average sumo wrestler. A boy who used to sweat like a pig as well as look like one, and changed his shirt once every week. Even with this description, I think it would be hard for one to comprehend the horrific stench that came from this shirt, which was now on Nee's head. It smelled worse than the gutter near the dining hall, which was where Nee threw it in by sheer reflex. "Are you mad?" asked Bolaji, who had now begun to approach Nee. It was of course a rhetorical question, but that wasn't the reason why he didn't answer. Nee didn't answer because he was frozen with fear. By now, all his fellow classmates, both boys and girls, had finished their tests and were heading towards the dormitory area. But of course, they all stopped to see the outcome of his predicament. Bolaji, at this point, was now standing right in front of Nee, with no shirt on. It wasn't a pretty sight or smell. Nee was in school uniform, which for him, a junior boy, was a white shirt, a pair of green shorts, brown sandals, and white socks. From where I was standing, this guy seemed twice Nee's size. "Go get it," ordered Bolaji. "What? You heard me." "There is no way I'm going in there." "Are you messing with me?" asked Bolaji. Again, a rhetorical question, and it was at this point Nee did something very brave and stupid. I don't know whether it was because his mates were watching, or if it was because of the mood he was in, but he replied, "No, Pumbaa, you're messing with me." Nee then proceeded to punch Bolaji's fat, sweaty belly as hard as he could. The chubby bully of course didn't feel a thing and gave Nee one of his own, which sent the first year flying. Nee hit the ground near the edge of the gutter. Bolaji then started running at him, while the 10-year-old was still on the floor dazed. Then it happened. Bolaji slipped, and Nee quickly moved out of the way, allowing the robust bully to fall headfirst into the gutter. And to make things worse for him, everyone watching, including some of his classmates, started laughing. "Are you coming?" I asked, bringing him back to reality. I was at this point heading towards the left end of the path, where Moremi House was. Moremi House was the dormitory JS1 boys stayed in, and it was practically right in front of the sick bay. "There's water," I pointed out. The tap in front of Moremi House was gushing out water. This was a good thing, considering water flowed an average of 6 hours a day. Lucky for us, all our classmates had gone to evening prep. If not, we would have been faced with a stampede of 11-year-olds, carrying empty buckets and kegs. Nee's area was situated in room 8, the last room, which was pretty similar to the rest of the rooms. It was large and filled with about a dozen iron bunk beds. It had a cupboard that took up a whole wall and was filled with student suitcases. "Here it is, your term time home," I said, bringing out a bunch of keys hidden under the pillow of the top bunk, which was well laid. I then showed him his cupboard where he kept all his clothes, provisions, books, and toiletries, as well as his bucket and 5-liter keg. "Before I forget, here's your wallet," I said, handing over a black leather-skinned wallet, which had 1,000 naira in it. "Pocket money?" "Yep. That really isn't much. Looks like your dad really has it in for you," I remarked. I then handed him a black, cylindrical object about 8 inches long with a diameter of about 2.5 inches. On the side of the object was a yellow switch. "What's this?" Nee asked as he took it from me. "That, my friend, is Bill, a tool you will need. It has a name." "Yes, it has a name. Bill has been good to me. Give it here." "Let me show you how to use this," I said, snatching the object from him. "This switch, when moved to the right, releases a saber that works like a boomerang," I said, demonstrating moving the switch to the right, unleashing a long curved blade. I then threw Bill, which supernaturally went around the room before heading back towards us. "See, now that's useful," I said, catching the weapon. "This baby has fattened me up with cashew. Take care of him." Move the switch to the left to release a grappling hook, which goes as far as 100 meters. I then handed Bill over to Nee and began to leave the room. "Oh, before I forget, meet me by the chemistry lab tomorrow morning. You do still know where that is? Yes, I know where it is, Nee answered offensively. About 5 minutes after I left, Nee had a bath. After he dressed up in his full Jaja housewear, which was a blue checkered shirt along with brown chino trousers, Nee decided to take a walk, even though it was about 9 o'clock and very dark. He didn't follow the wide path. Instead, he jumped over the gutter that was about 10 meters away from the tap, onto a big sand field. This was the field he got knocked out on. It was right in front of Oduduwa House, the JS2 dormitory, which was on his left. Ha! It's still there, Nee quietly laughed to himself, as he saw the warden's run-down Peugeot 504 parked in front of his house. The warden loved that car, and he used to work on it every day himself. He wasn't a cruel man, but at the same time he wasn't nice. One time, on the night before SS3 boys graduated, class of 93, just to get back at him, they took out the whole engine of his car. "Jaja boy, come here," he yelled a senior, standing in front of Jaja House's front gate, the SS3 dormitory, as Nee walked past. He was of course talking to Nee. The SS3 boy called him Jaja boy because he didn't know his name, but went by the housewear he had on. It was something all senior boys did. He was of average height, about 5 feet 9 inches, a bit skinny and very dark. It was obvious he had just cut his hair, and even though he had a baby face, Nee could tell he was about 17. The boy was wearing a red towel with a white t-shirt over it, and was holding 2 metal buckets in his left hand. It was quite clear he wanted Nee to fetch water for him. "Could you please help me fetch these buckets?" asked the boy politely. "Sure, no problem," responded Nee, surprised by the way he was asked. A polite senior was a rare thing, which made Nee suspect he was a born-again Christian or something. The water tank in front of Jaja House was empty as usual, so he went to Danfodio, the SS2 dormitory next door, to fetch his water. "Thanks a lot, I really appreciate it," said the senior as he collected the 2 buckets of water. "What's your name?" "Nee." "You're a JS1 boy, aren't you?" "Yes, I am. I hope boarding house life isn't too hard for you." "Nothing I can't handle." "Good. Well, my name's Rotimi. If you need anything, I'm in room 3, and my class is SS3J, he informed, patting Nee on the head. Nee looked at his watch, and it was 9:45. The junior boy then quickly headed back to Moremi. When he got back, the dormitory was filled with JS1 boys. Entering his room, he found it was filled with life. Some boys were playing checkers in a corner, others were playing cards, and others were having an intense conversation in a corner, while others had already made themselves comfortable on their beds, getting ready to sleep. Nee got to his corner, and on the lower bunk of his bed was a boy lying down. He was a little shorter than him, crying his eyes out silently. He was still in his Moremi housewear, a yellow checkered shirt, although he had taken off his slippers. There was another boy sitting right beside him, taller than he was, but shorter than Nee. He was in Jaja housewear, and wasn't as dark as the other boy. The boy in the Jaja housewear went by the name of Ajibola, and the other boy's name was Tokwe. Ajibola was trying to console Tokwe, but it didn't seem like he could cheer him up. "What's wrong with him?" Nee asked. "I can't understand, really. All that happened was a senior boy took his toilet roll. I mean, he said he would return it," explained Ajibola after taking Nee aside. It was obvious Ajibola didn't know how things worked in boarding house. When a senior said he was going to return something, most of the time he didn't. But still, toilet roll was nothing to cry about. Then again, toilet roll probably wasn't the reason why Tokwe was crying. Nee began to remember how it used to be for him during the first couple of nights. He used to try and hide the fact he was homesick until things began to get really hard for him. Even the slightest mishap led him to breaking down in tears. "It's best you leave him alone. He'll be okay in the morning," Nee advised as he made himself comfortable on his bed. At night, he couldn't sleep and ended up waking up about 4 in the morning. "Still here," Nee said to himself, getting out of bed. Part of him still thought that everything that happened to him the day before was a dream. By the time the rest of the dormitory was woken up at 6 in the morning, he had done his chores, washed all the dirty clothes he could find in his suitcase, bathed, and dressed up. Nee didn't wear his white school uniform shirt, for he didn't normally wear that until he was ready to leave the dormitory. Instead of his white shirt, he wore a white t-shirt, along with his green school uniform shorts, white socks, and brown sandals. The dormitory was most of the time woken up by the housemaster, who would come into the dormitory every morning to tell anyone he sees awake to bang the pole with a stick. The sound those poles used to make when hit was so irritating it caused me to have pain in the pit of my stomach. Unfortunately for Nee, that particular morning, he was told to hit the pole. The housemaster then went around the dormitory and flogged boys who were still on their beds. Soon enough, boys were running all over the place, some to have a bath, others to do their chores. Nee went back to his room to get something to eat. His bunkmate was awake with a red plastic bucket in his hand, crying. What's wrong? Nee asked, now getting concerned. For Nee thought if this guy kept this up, he might have a nervous breakdown by the end of the week. It's my portion. Uma made me a toilet washer, I stuttered out, before breaking down further into tears. Now, most JS1 boys would have deemed this as pathetic, but Nee couldn't help feeling sorry for the guy. So he went to room 1, where his house captain slept. The house captain, like every other prefect to make a mark in a junior boy's life, was an SS3 boy. In Ejaniki, every year, a group of SS3 students were picked to be prefects. All students chosen to be prefects were normally A-grade students. There were a total of 12 house captains, 6 male ones and 6 female ones, each with their own assistant. Their job was to ensure all the students in the dormitory cleaned their dorms and behaved themselves. There were 2 social prefects, 1 boy, 1 girl, and they were usually the 2 most popular or rather coolest students in the school. Their job was to organize social activities. The 2 labor prefects, 1 boy and girl, to organize students to trim grass in the school. 2 dining hall prefects that maintained order in the dining hall. 2 health prefects that did absolutely nothing. 2 sport prefects, which were usually 2 very sporty students. And a head boy and head girl who helped maintain law and order amongst the entire student body. Nee's house captain's name was Uma. He was a big 17-year-old, tall and quite muscular. Uma was very dark and had a shaved head. At the time, he was half dressed in his uniform. All that was left for him to wear was his shirt. Nee figured they made him a prefect because he was good at sports. "Excuse me," Nee said, getting his house captain's attention. "Yes?" Uma answered slowly, physically telling the JS1 boy whatever he had to say better be important. "I don't want to be a bother, but I was wondering whether I could swap portions with someone." "Come again?" Uma replied, giving the notion Nee asked a favor he couldn't possibly satisfy. "I want to swap portions with someone. You see, my friend gets skin irritation very easily, unlike me. So, as to make things easier for him, I was wondering whether he could do my window cleaning while I did his toilet washing." "Are you serious?" "Yes, I am." "Fine. But remember, if that toilet is seen messed up in the morning or during inspection, you will be punished." "I understand." You know that feeling one gets when you do something very noble, then regret it deeply moments later? Well, that's exactly the feeling Nee got when he entered the toilets. There was feces everywhere, as well as maggots marching all over the place. After he washed the toilet, Tokpa and Ajubala treated him to a big bowl of Frosties, which was a big wow in boarding house. But while Nee was feasting, he couldn't help thinking about the fact he had to do that portion every morning for the rest of the term. About 50 minutes later, Nee and his classmates were all driven out of the dormitory. Nee and his friends began to make their way to the classroom areas. They took the long wide path route to class. Like was expected, SS3 boys stopped them at the checkpoint to make them fetch their bathing water. Checkpoint was a shade that was made up of 4 metal poles covered by an aluminium roof. This shaded a bench beside a long pole gate, which opened vertically. The checkpoint was on slightly higher ground, which was sandy. After playing the role of slaves for 17-year-old boys, they decided to skip breakfast, which in boarding house terms meant they were living large for that moment. "Ha! It's still there," Nee said as he looked up before they passed through the corridor of the school's chemistry lab, referring to a bunch of keys held with a red rubber holder with a red plastic clip, tangled up in a set of 4 wires held by tall wooden poles. They were one of many set of wires allowing electricity to flow all around the school. They got tangled there when a Macaulay boy, purple checkered shirt, called Ikechukwu, was swinging his key holder round and round until for some reason he let them go. They went straight up into the air and got tangled up in the wires. The boys made their way up the stairs of the JS1 classroom block, and Nee's classmates entered the first class, which was JS1F. You see, each classroom block had 6 arms, or rather classes, which was F, G, C, J, L, N. N was considered the class of the dumb students, while F was considered the class of the brightest. All that changed in the senior years, as J, L, N were the science classes. Nee followed them into the class, but before he entered, he stopped to look at the view from the block. He could see the administration block in front of him, which was about 40 meters away. At a diagonal distance of about 30 meters on his left, he could see the JS3 block, behind which was the SS2 block, beside which was the SS3 block. After taking a good look at the buildings, which helped realign his mind, Nee joined his companions, who had already made themselves comfortable at the back of the classroom. There, Nee got to know these boys very well. They told him about some of their experiences, likes, dislikes, and dreams. Nee just listened, which seemed to be okay with them, seeing as they kept on talking. About 10 minutes before school assembly, I went to his classroom block, apologizing for not being at the chemistry lab, and showed him his class, which was JS1N, and his desk, which was in the center of the class. For Ni, time went by fast that day. It wasn't long before it was break time. He had some money on him, and so decided to get something to eat. Ni stopped by 1F to get Tokwe and Ajibula to tag along, which they did. "Are you sure the snack van is here? I don't want to go near the danger zone for nothing," inquired Tokwe, worried about going near the SS3 block, where we had an 88% chance of our money being taken off us, beaten up, or humiliated in some way. You see, every school day, at about 10:30 in the morning, a blue van, covered with pictures of ice cream and pastry snacks, would park on a big sand field in front of the left end of the SS3 classroom block to sell snacks to the students. This meant junior boys had to pass by the SS3 block to get to the van. They stopped by the home economics lab because Ajibula wanted to get some money from his guardian, who worked in the department. Tokwe and Ni waited outside. "Oh look, a monkey swung by," Ni said, looking at the forest in front of the SS1 block. Tokwe, on the other hand, was in a world of his own. He didn't even take any notice of what his friend said or did, because he was busy staring at a girl sitting on her own, on a concrete bench near the economics block, reading a book. She was a junior girl. I could tell because she was wearing a pinafore. She looked like she was our age, or at most a year older. She had light skin and long black hair that she packed to the back. All in all, she was quite pretty. Tokwe, on the other hand, thought she was beautiful. Ni could see it in his eyes. "Why don't you go talk to her?" "Talk to who?" Tokwe asked, trying to pretend he didn't know what Ni was talking about. "The girl you're drooling over. Talk to her. I'm sure she's friendly," Ni said, trying to encourage him to take a chance. Ajibula then came out and was ready to get something to eat. "What would I say?" "I don't know. Anything." "Don't do it. She'll think you're Raz," teased Ajibula, who found the whole scenario amusing. "You're not helping," Ni said, jokingly pushing Ajibula away. "Tell you what, all three of us should go," Ni then suggested. Tokwe didn't approve of the suggestion, but he didn't disapprove of it either. Ajibula didn't really care what they did, so long as they got to the snack van eventually. So all three boys approached her. "Hi there," Ni greeted. "Hello," she replied. "You don't mind if we keep you company?" "No, not at all," she answered, a bit surprised at the request. "My name's Ni," he said, bringing out his hand to shake hers. "I'm Rebecca," she said, obliging the gesture. "These are my friends, Ajibula and Tokwe. Nice to meet you all." By now she had put her book aside. Ni then nudged Tokwe to get him to say something. "So, Rebecca, what class are you in?" asked Tokwe nervously. "I'm in JS1J. "Really? Funny, I haven't noticed you around," contributed Ajibula, prolonging the conversation, noticing Tokwe was lost for words. "That's probably because I'm a day student." "Interesting. I take it you live nearby," Ni added, at the same time still getting Tokwe to say something by nudging him. "Actually, I don't. I live all the way in Ikeja. My overprotective father wanted to make me a day student anyway. Not that I'm complaining. I don't think I could survive boarding house." "Sure you could. It's not as bad as people make it out to be," said Tokwe finally. "Why are you sitting all by yourself?" Ajibula asked, at this point nudging Ni because he wanted to go and get something to eat. "I was with some friends, but they ran off somewhere to start some mischief. We were thinking of going to get something to eat. Care to join us?" Ni asked, yielding to Ajibula's impatience. "Why not?" she said, getting up from her seat. At this point, Ni could tell Rebecca was different from the other girls, for not many JS1 girls would walk with three boys her age as if she was one of the lads. It wasn't like she was a tomboy or anything, she just was friendly. By the time we got to the snack van, we were all laughing together. Even Tokwe was feeling comfortable in her company. "Rebecca, you buy all the ice cream. You're a girl. Senior boys won't tax you." "Okay, Ni, but I get a meat pie with my ice cream, courtesy of you." "Deal." After Rebecca returned with their snacks, each of them thanked her as they received their ice cream. They started back to our classroom block, feeling pretty clever with themselves. Then, without warning, they were intercepted by BMW, a group of four SS3 boys. Built for brothers you don't mess with. They were a group of boys who even bullied their classmates. There was Gbadebo. He was about 5 feet 8 inches, very hefty and dark with a fade haircut. Another member was Dyer. He was about 6 feet, quite light and slim, with a low haircut that seemed to be fresh from the barber. Then there was the giant of the group, Chukwudi, who was about 6 feet 6 inches, very muscular and very dark. His hair was a lot. In fact, it seemed like he was growing an afro. Then there was the leader of the group, Motukwe, He was about 5 feet 7 inches and was very athletic and mean looking. He was fair in complexion and he had shaved off all the hair on his head. "I'll see you guys later," Rebecca said casually, leaving them to face a new set of tormentors. "Empty your pockets," ordered Modupe sternly. Without hesitation, the boys did as they were told. "Where's the money?" "Finished. We spent it all on ice cream," Nee answered, trying not to smile. You see, while his mates saw 4 huge monsters, all Nee saw was a couple of teenage boys on a power trip. "No money, eh? Okay. Hand over your ice creams." "What?" blurted out Ajibula by sheer reflex, very unhappy with the senior boy's request. "Don't make me repeat myself." "I don't believe this," mumbled Ajibula as he handed over his ice cream. "Hey, I don't have one," moaned Badebo. "Keep your hair on. I'll tax another junior boy," assured Modupe. "Hey, Chinko," yelled out Modupe. He caught the attention of a slim Asian boy who was about 5 feet 5 inches tall, with short black hair and an ice cream in his right hand. "Come here," Modupe continued. The boy did what he was told and approached where they were standing. "What's your name?" "Selema." "What class are you in?" "JS3. "Okay, Selema, hand over your ice cream." "Excuse me?" responded Selema, who almost seemed surprised at the request. "I said, hand over your ice cream," repeated Modupe, now stepping right up to the junior boy. Selema in turn stared Modupe right in the eyes, with defiance oozing out of him. The JS3 boy then threw his ice cream on the floor. Modupe, who was by now clearly infuriated, pushed Selema to the floor, who immediately flipped back to his feet and stood in a defensive stance. "Do you want to fight?" asked Modupe, then proceeding to take off his shirt. Selema didn't answer the question. All he did was raise his right eyebrow while he maintained his defensive position. "What's going on here?" asked a familiar voice. They all turned around and saw it was Rotimi wearing the head boy badge. "Stay out of this, rodent." "Modupe, let them go. I don't want to have to put your name down." Modupe stopped and gave Selema a dirty look. He then gave Tokpa a dirty look. He then gave Rotimi a dirty look. He then gave Ajibula a dirty look, who responded with a look that said, "What did I do?" He then put his shirt on and walked away, with the rest of his gang following. That day, Nee stayed back after school in his class and started a diary. He wanted to keep an account of everything that would happen to him in his life from then on. He had just about finished writing an account of everything that happened to him so far when I walked in. "Hey there," I greeted as I took a seat facing him. "So, how is Ijaniki so far?" I then asked. "Let's just say it's everything I expected it to be." "Where were you?" Nee then asked, remembering he hadn't seen me at all in class that day. "I had to take care of something." "It's funny, I still can't believe what's happening." "Well, believe it." "What was your life before you were awoken?" "Pretty standard," I responded. I then got up from my seat and moved to the front of the class and said, "Your calling isn't some kind of punishment. It's a chance to really be used by the Almighty Father. You still go on living your life as you choose, and you will still be judged by your deeds when you cross over." That is the end of episode 2. The scripture for this episode is Philippians 2 verse 3. "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." How would you relate this scripture with this episode? And how would you relate this scripture to your life? Leave your answers via any of JOMAJ Studios' social media platforms, which can be found at jomajstudios.com. The Fall of Nell is now available on paperback and Kindle at Amazon. For more details, go to jomajstudios.com and click on Bookstore. Also at jomajstudios.com, you can check out our YouTube page, Facebook page, Twitter page, and our Instagram page, and other website features. See how you can get involved with us at jomajstudios.com.